Hello everyone, I'm here to discuss the course I have developed on using and documenting the evidence in occupational therapy. This course is being developed as an introductory course for occupational therapy students, assistant students, on evidence-based practice. It will include social learning theory, group work and self-directed learning, development of active learning and reflective thinking, and summative and formative assessments with feedback. The situational factors that I had to consider were a class size of about 20 occupational therapy assistant students that are primarily females. The course will be developed for a face-to-face introduction. The level of awareness will be reviewed during the class-led discussion, and the length of this course is developed to be over 2 class sessions for approximately 1 to 1.5 hours each session. This design stresses collaboration, critical thinking, and reflection on action. The student learning outcomes will include applying critical thinking to analyze evidence-based and occupation-based techniques, to demonstrate understanding of the key concepts of evidence-based practice, to formulate a connection and integration between population intervention comparison and outcomes, or PICO statements, and evidence-based practice, to compare and contrast perceptions of evidence-based practice amongst classmates, to develop an interest in the evidence-based practice triad, and to identify levels of evidence and key points in peer-reviewed articles. The curriculum is designed around social learning theory. Albert Bandura in 1977 stated learning would be exceedingly laborious, not to mention hazardous, if people had to rely solely on the effects of their own actions to inform them of what to do. Fortunately, most human behavior is learned observationally. Through modeling, from observing others, one will form an idea of how new behaviors are performed, and on later occasions, this coded information will serve as a guide for action. Social learning theory focuses on learning that occurs in a social environment through observation and role modeling of behaviors. Simulations and observations occur between the person, the environment, and behavior. And social learning requires attention, memory, retention, and reproduction of behaviors. It is reinforced through both internal and external motivation. The design will include a brief overview on scientific evidence, integrating clinician expertise, and also integrating client and family values and desires in an evidence-based practice triad. Step 1 of the curriculum will be an introduction to evidence-based practice through class-led discussion on their experiences, their perceptions, and barriers to implementation of these techniques. Step 2 will focus on clinical questions and PICO statements and how to focus those clinical questions using strategies that include teaching Boolean phrases of "and" to limit the number of responses, the phrase "or" to increase the number of responses, or putting quotation marks around phrases to narrow the search. Step 3, critical thinking and reflection, will be developed through role-play models on communicating how scientific evidence supports the activities and roles the client values, combined with the clinician's expertise. Step 4 will be on appraising levels of evidence and identifying key points in the evidence and also on completing those critical review forms. Step 5 includes applying the evidence and communicating with clients. It will occur through role play on how to share the information found during the critical review to the client and the parents. Evaluation will include think, pair, share, using the question, how does evidence-based practice benefit the profession of occupational therapy? Also in step 6, the evaluation of outcomes and the documentation of the data will be included through development of a treatment plan in a group format after watching a video on an assessment that includes presentation of the client's difficulties and the parents' desires for treatment. This curriculum will include learning activities through learner-centered teaching and problem-based learning through class-led discussions. It will include introduction to self-learning and evidence-based practice triad in the methods and the databases. The self-learning will be applying the evidence-based practice principles to case scenarios and determine how to integrate the evidence-based practice triad after reviewing the levels of evidence, the key points, the application of the evidence, and the integration of the client, clinician, and the research. Further learning activities will include case scenarios that will be developed and presented to the class, group problem solving, and simulations through role play. The assessments that will be utilized include developing a PICO question, use of group presentation, self-assessment, and group assessment, use of the think, pair, share question, including a minute write-up at the end of the class-led discussion, and introduction and development of critical review forms on both quantitative and qualitative research articles. This course will use formative assessment, forward-looking assessment, and self-assessment to empower students as self-regulated learners. It will include summative assessments that identify what constitutes above standard work, and below standard work. The summative assessments will be presented in the form of a rubric that is handed out at the beginning of the course. The rubric will be used to ensure fair and equal grading of all student assignments. This course is being supported through evidence on learner-centered teaching, presented by Kramer, Adeshi, Kearney, Cohen, Ames, Shea, Shem, and Bloomberg. Learner-centered teaching includes development of self-assessment techniques that are integrated throughout the group activities. Self-assessment techniques will be used to promote critical reflection on learning experiences. Another aspect of learner-centered teaching is problem-based learning, and this will be used during the class-led discussions. Engagement in problem-based learning will include implementing evidence strategies to support occupational therapy techniques, maintain professional reputations, and occupational therapy roles. Critical thinking will be promoted through the exercises on PICO statements, through the case scenarios, and through the development of the treatment plan. And clinical reasoning will also be supported through the development of the treatment plan and discussing with co-members each individual's own clinical reasoning and then integrating these into an evidence-based, effective treatment plan. In conclusion, the problem being addressed in this course is the need for occupational therapists to develop the use and documentation of evidence-based practice within their treatment sessions in order to fulfill the American Occupational Therapy Association's Centennial Vision to integrate science-driven and evidence-based practice into therapy. This course also supports the Affordable Care Act of 2010's requirement for evidence-based practice to be implemented within healthcare activities. While reviewing the literature for this course, I was impressed by how many problem-based learning courses I have participated in during my education. Starting with elementary education, I've been taught how to think about thinking and work with groups to facilitate learning. As I reflected on these experiences, I realized how much more can be learned in that type of an environment. At that moment, I changed the lecture portion of this course to a class-led discussion and worked to ensure that all of the class activities would promote active learning strategies, reflective thinking, clinical reasoning, and critical evaluation. The information being presented in this course is designed to be implemented easily and immediately into practice. The literature on problem-based learning by Roy Ying emphasizes the need to develop more reflective thought, critical analysis, and clinical reasoning to enable therapists to transition easily from the student learning experience into clinicians. Development of these thinking skills will promote more reflection and practice, consideration for using scientific evidence combined with client desires and values, and clinician expertise into an effective evidence-based treatment strategy. These are the references that I used while developing this course. Thank you very much for your time and attention.